Welcome to the Burn Factory Podcast with Priest and Phoenix Rivera. Listen as the boys interview the biggest names in sports and entertainment. The Burn Factory starts now.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Burn Factory Podcast. I'm your host, Priest, joined by my co-host, my brother, the one and only Phoenix. Say what's up to the camera.
What's up, y'all? We are happy to be back in Colorado. Most of you guys don't know, but we actually grew up in Colorado Springs, but today we are here at Black Lab Sports in Boulder, Colorado, and man, do we have a guest for you. Our guest today is a true mastermind of the fight game. He is the founder of Onyx Sports. He has also coached over 20 world champions with some of the likes of Rose Namajunas, Justin Gaethje, and Rashad Evans. He was also the 2021 Coach of the Year, and to round it off, just an overall great guy.
So please give a warm welcome to Trevor Wittman. Woo! So many accolades. Gosh, it just keeps on going down and down and down. But Trevor, I gotta ask, it's 9 o'clock right now in the morning in Colorado, 8 o'clock back where we're from in California. What time do you wake up in the morning, and what's your morning routine?
So nowadays, as I'm getting older, I'm up by about 5 o'clock. Yeah, and I enjoy that. I'd rather go to sleep earlier. You know, it's hard for me to stay up. That's like when I go in quarter fights. It's always tough for me because I'm like, man, it's so late. You know, but I enjoy the mornings. I like to get things done. Also in my shop, as the employees start to get there, it's very hard for me to get things done, and then the fighters show up. So really the only time that I get time to myself, and you know, if I'm working on a new glove or a prototyping and the research development part, which is my favorite part behind the sewing machine, that's the only time I really get that, and then on the weekends. So I'm up early.
Busy man right there. You said that you're making gloves. How many gloves do you think you've made in your...
And I've made over 1,000 myself, at least, yeah. But that doesn't include like mitts. Like I really started with making mitts. It wasn't gloves. I started making mitts because I could not find, I was like a mitt junkie. I'm always, I'd see new mitts and I'm like, oh, those look sweet, I need to buy them. But every time it was like a letdown. It was like I was bad for Christmas, you know, when you open your present and you're like, I can't wait. And you know what it is. And then you get it, you're like, I got the cheaper version. I got the knockoff. You know, but that's how it was. It was, it was a disappointment every time I put a mitt on. I've got very small hands. And when you put on a mitt that doesn't have a left or a right, and that's just the standard in this industry, you know, it's like make it fit. You know, it fits both hands. That's funny to me. I think that's kind of crazy, especially with sport that we're in. And, you know, if you look at like videos of Mike Tyson hitting mitts, he's always knocking the mitt off of someone. And I have to squeeze on the mitt with my fingers like this. And my hand started to curl. And I got this like, everybody's like, is that from punches? I'm like, no, I think it's from squeezing the mitt so they don't fall off. So I was like, I need to figure something out. And then working with Shane Carwin, he was like one of the biggest punchers I've ever dealt with. And my elbow issues and my wrist issues I started dealing with, I was like, I got to figure this out because the pads are just too hard. There's too much shock. So I went to Joann Fabrics and I bought all these different foams. And I remember the old lady, she was like, what are you going to make? Yeah. I almost wanted to tell her like furniture or something because I was like,
you told her furniture?
No. I told her I was going to make some, you know, to take punches on my hands. You know, I tried to explain it in the right way to her and she was like, oh, okay. You know, and I got this material that, you know, was close to leather, you know, which I thought would be good. And I took like 5 pairs of mitts, cut them apart, kind of found a pattern I liked, didn't know if it'd work. I'd never used a sewing machine before. So I asked my mom to borrow her sewing machine and I started sewing. And yeah, I still have my first pair of mitts that I made. And I remember, you know, everybody laughing when I was at the gym and I brought them in and they're like, but when they put it on, I actually had a glove for my right hand and a left hand glove for the left hand, and everybody who put it on wanted one. So, wow. My gym at that point it was a big gym. It was like 13,000 square feet. I had 14 coaches, and all the striking coaches were like, "I want a pair," and I was like, "Just pay for the material, and I'll make you some." So I made a run. You know, after my first pair of mitts, I made a run of about 10 pairs and. Then I was at the fights and I kept making mitts. I was like, man, I enjoy this. Let me make them a little better. Each time I made them, I found ways I could make them better. And then I was at the fights one time and Henry Hoof was like, dude, where'd you get those mitts? And I was like, I made those. And he's like, what? He's like, I'll pay whatever. So then I started making them for coaches that I liked. And then their coaches wanted them. And I remember there was a point where I was like 2 years out from orders where I'd tell them you have to pre-order. and I'll get them to you when I can. And I started making body shields, and it was just coaching's gear that I started with.
How long did it take to make a glove?
A long time. For me, I'm an artist, so I have to be like a perfectionist. So I'm like, I'm not a fast sewer. Like, it was funny because I was making gear for probably 3 or 4 years, and then I went into a sewing place to, talk about sewing machines and needles, because I didn't even know what kind of needles. You have to, certain threads go with certain needles, certain needles go with certain materials. I knew none of this. I was just using, what I had and what I could find. And I remember going into Ralph Sewing, and I talked to him. I was like, hey, I want to, get an hour with someone to help me. And he's like, and I was talking about needles and all sorts of stuff. What sewing machine would be good for, bunching up leathers? And he's like, well, what do you make? And I was like, let me go to my car. And I had a rolling bag that I took to the airport. Like, so sweet. Like, it was the nicest of leather. Had our logo hand cut in it. And he's like, you make this shit? He was like blown away. It was like one of the funniest conversations, but yeah.
Did you ever prick yourself sewing?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
How bad does that hurt?
Really bad. There was one time where I went through my nail, but the angle of where my finger was, it like sliced the whole nail, but didn't even make me bleed. It like split my whole nail, and it like made my heart beat. And instantly, you have to respect that machine, like especially the leather sewing machines. Like, they're super powerful. But I was like, thank God I haven't sewed my fingers with a sewing machine, but absolutely, when you're like pulling things apart and then hand sewing all my body shields, I actually have to puncture each hole, then I'd wrap the edges because I didn't have a sewing machine that'd go around that much foam. So I'd have to like...
All hands?
Yeah, all hands. And I used to poke myself all the time with that. And that was a pain in the ass too, just, punching each hole. And they're like, a quarter inch apart, and you're going around a huge body shield. That was like a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so, all right, Trevor, so actually on the show, we do use the acronym BURN. So each letter is kind of a different time in your life. So starting with B is beginning. So take us to the beginning, your childhood, growing up. What was it like, and were there any burn moments that you had to overcome?
Well, my childhood was crazy because I was super small. I was like all the way to 11th grade. I was 4'11", 92 pounds. Super athletic with everything I did, but I was like super small. My dad was traveling a lot, so we were going from like state to state. So I had Arizona to Colorado, back to Arizona, out to Connecticut, to New Jersey, back to Connecticut. He was a store opener for Home Depot, so I traveled a lot and was bullied a lot, so I got into karate, Kempo karate, did that for a while, did some point fighting, was very good at it. And then there's a couple bird moments, but this was kind of a funny bird moment. I went into a boxing gym in Connecticut with my buddy, and I'll never forget. The first time I sparred. Well, the day I was there, the guy looks at me and he's like, "Hey, you wanna do some sparring?" And I was like, "Yeah, I definitely want to do this." And I'm watching all the guys in there. I'm like, "I'll kill these guys." Karate mindset.
These guys got nothing on me.
And he told me to go sign a waiver, so I went home and I signed it myself because I knew my dad wouldn't. And I went back to the gym, and it was in New Haven, Connecticut. And I remember getting in there, and I'm like, look at this guy I'm about to go with. He had like love handles, like a kid had love handles. And I'll never forget, like I landed the first shot because that's what point fighting is. And I was never in combat. It's point fighting. You land and you stop. Man, he got me up against the ropes. It felt like probably 2 minutes. It was probably like 20 seconds. And I remember looking at the coach stopped it, and I remember looking at him. I'm looking at out of the ear hole of the headgear because I had this like sweaty, nasty. Because in boxing, you use you hang the headgears up on the thing. You have the gloves hang up on the thing. You're just using the equipment all the time. Kids can't afford it, so you're just putting the stuff on. And I had this sweaty headgear. I remember putting it on. I was all wet and cold, and it was all loose, didn't fit tight. And I remember looking at him because I told him I did karate, and he kind of laughed. He's like, "Oh yeah, cool." And I looked at him, and he said, "Yeah, you might want to stick to karate." And you ever seen Something About Mary, the movie?
What is it?
Something About Mary.
Something About Mary.
All right, yeah.
I think so. No.
So there's a scene in there where she brings Brett Favre in, and this girl, liked Brett Favre, so he went and found her, but he was in love with her, and he brings Brett Favre over there, and then he leaves and he starts crying. That was me walking home that day. I remember getting off the bus. And I was like crying, and the car go by and I'd toughen up, and then again go by and I'd cry. But I remember sitting at my house for like a month and going, man, like I thought I was I was like, dude, like a real ninja. And was nothing. It just blew my mind. Like my confidence was down. I was just like, dude, I got into karate for being bullied. And I was like, I actually thought I would be able to protect myself. And thank God I never had to use it because I would have got my ass kicked. So then I went back to boxing and fell in love with it and fell in love with combat. I fell in love with, just facing. It was grit every day. Like you never knew whether you did well or not. I mean, you're going balls to the wall every time you spar. And you always feel like you get your ass kicked. But what I felt like built me up was going back in the day after, days like that, because we'd spar 3 times a week. And the coach that I had was a big heavy-set dude who looked like he never did a workout in his life, and he'd always be like, you guys hit like fucking girls, and always negative. And I was just like, dude, the coach sucks, because I played lots of athletics. But just going in there and facing ass kickings every day, there's something special about that. There's something unique. When you start to fall in love with that kind of hurricane, that storm, that chaos, it kind of puts a different definition on chaos. It's almost like you start to enjoy that realm because you find yourself. There's no outside distractions. There's that present moment of I don't have to worry about did I get my homework done. I don't have to worry about girlfriend issues. Like you got no outside because there's no time for that. And it's just that being present. I think I fell in love with in those chaotic situations. And then also being able to breathe in those situations. That's one of the hardest things to do is you tense up. Because you have to get through the rounds, and so you have to find pleasure and calmness in there. When you see fighters fight, especially high-level guys fight, the top world-class fighters are the ones that are in control of themselves at all times, that they can throw a 90% shot when they're dead tired, and they don't look tired. They're like a duck on water. They're like smooth, but underneath their legs are still kicking, and they're great actors. They're not showing it on their face when they get hit with a good shot. They're not opening their mouth and breathing with a mouthpiece is a tough thing. That's just a little piece of it. But so going through the childhood age, that was a funny story of me going to Connecticut, moving to a city from Arizona. Arizona and Connecticut were totally different. I used to have bangs. I was like a little skater kid, and I shaved my head, and it was totally this haircut is what I got from Connecticut because it was just different. I loved it. Like after being in Connecticut, I really liked the people. I liked the city feel. I really enjoyed that process. But I'd say my burn moment was after I was boxing for a long period of time is when I decided to go pro and I was injured. And I ended up having a pneumophlebitic, which is like your lung expands. And I went and seen like 3 different doctors, and they told me I should not. And I wanted to listen to my parents because I was like 18 at the time, and they were just like, we don't want you boxing anyway, but don't do it. And I had a son, 1-year-old son. I was going through child custody battles at the time. I thought nothing was going to work out my way. I ended up taking care of my son for the first 9 months, and then his mom wanted to come back and pretty much have him. So that was a tough situation for me. Plus I was dealing with not boxing no more. I was seeing a counselor. I remember I was just like, that was probably, I was never suicidal, but I didn't care about dying, if I could say that the right way, I would never go and take my own life, but I was like, dude, just put me in any scenario, I was just in that realm that I was just like, boxing was the only thing that taught me about myself and to listen to myself. Because, you go in the boxing gym, I was skinny, I was little, everybody's like, how the hell are you going to box, and I'd love to show people, because I could always do opposite of what they told me. When I listened to people in school and they were like, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're a bad kid, I'd be a bad kid, So I started listening to myself, and that's what boxing taught me. When I didn't have boxing no more, I got back in that realm of where I was a bad kid again, and I was making bad decisions, and you're going to amount to nothing. And I just kind of got in that realm of, this world's not here for me. Outside of now, I have a 1-year-old, and they might take him from me. So that was like a scenario that was very hard. And I was seeing a counselor, and I remember she had told me it was a lady counselor, and I was like, and I've seen lots of counselors through my life, but that was the one that kind of like listened to me and didn't tell me what to do, like kind of asked me like, what do you think you should do? Like just the way she spoke to me. And she's like, you want to be a promoter? And I'm like, no, hell no, I don't want to be a promoter. And she's like, what about a manager? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's not my fit. And she's like, well, what about a coach? And I'm like, I just thought the word coach, I was like, let me grab some mitts and just move with someone, like be a partner. I was like, let me try that. So I went and hit some mitts with a couple guys at the gym, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And it was like I was very good at teaching because I played lots of sports, and I was athletic, and I seen things differently. And I never was taught anything in boxing. I'd watch the pros in the gym, and then I'd go home and watch the fights, and I'm like, oh, like the guy in the gym did that. And I would study tapes, and I was like able to teach people in a different way. I was just kind of gifted that way because I spoke to people a certain way, you know, instead of like in doctor terms, you know, when you go to a doctor, I'm able to explain what you have. I was good with that. And I went back to the counselor and I said, man, I like it. I like it a lot. And I started getting that realm of, you know, I think I found a shift. So I was like, let me just work with a couple amateurs. And I opened up a little gym in my basement for like 5 guys, you know, and we went to the thing. We went it was 5 guys that we had. Only 3 of them got fights the first time that I coached. And we had won all 3 fights. And I'll never forget that each time, those 3 fights, each one of those fights, I was holding back emotion in the weirdest way. It was like I wanted to cry. And I was like, what is this? Like, I've never had that fighting. I remember fighting, but I wanted to cry before. I'm like, what am I doing? You know, you get your head wraps on. You're like, what am I doing? And afterwards, you're like, when am I doing it again? You know, it was like that rush afterwards. Like, you know, you're facing the fear. Why am I even signing up to do this for free? You know, I'm actually paying to do this. When it was coaching, I didn't have that. I was just like cool, calm, and just feeling bliss and a weird emotion, almost like when I had my son. It was like helping someone, giving to something, and seeing them succeed was 10 times better than me succeeding. And I fell in love with that and became a very successful amateur coach. Within like 2 years, we had all my guys were Golden Gloves champions. It was like crazy. And I had my first pro, and this is like within a short period of time. Within like 2 years, I was a main event coach on ESPN Friday Night Fights, talking with Teddy Atlas, who was like my idol. Teddy Atlas was a coach I looked up to. So I would say that was my burn moment where, you know, I've fallen a lot throughout my life, again, from the bullying, from the not amounting to anything, to having a lot of like family issues, especially outside family issues, outside of my parents. It's more of like outside of that. And then moving from school to school to school to school, like always having to find new friends like that. I always had those obstacles. And when I got to the city, I just got along with city people better. I was a little wild. I liked to do things outside the box. I was aggressive. I was super aggressive when I was young. And when I had a release like boxing, it calmed me down and it made me, you know, more normal. And when I didn't have that boxing and had to shift to something, how I got my release was helping others. So it was kind of crazy to kind of go through that. But boxing was my life. And without boxing, I had nothing. I was like back into that world of, again, I don't care if I'm here, but I'm not going to take my life. I'm going to make someone take it, you know?
For sure. This is actually leading us right into you and burn. It stands for unfortunate. Just like how I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I was unfortunately caught on fire in a school science experiment by my teacher that went horribly, horribly wrong and literally blew up like a bomb in my face. And I was immediately rushed to ICU burn clinic, where I spent a week there, had 7 surgeries, 1 every single day with a 50% chance to survive. But whenever I was in the hospital, that's where I found my burn moment. I was telling you earlier before we started how I would put golf ball after golf ball after golf ball into this little glass jar, all hooked up to all these medications, IVs, couldn't even see because my face was swelled shut. And I truly believe if that burn moment doesn't happen in the hospital, I don't have this podcast. I'm not talking Trevor Wittman, one of the greatest coaches of all time, and nor meet incredible people. So
I think unfortunate times are really who we are, and they really make us to who we are. And for you, you mentioned an unfortunate time with not being able to box anymore, but were there any other unfortunate times that you could share with us?
Absolutely. I mean, we could spend all day going over those moments. I love those moments. I've fallen in love with those types of moments. I almost feel like there's so many different places to look, with perspective. And when you're at your lowest moment, you can only look up. And I think that's kind of that scenario where you have to find a way. And that's that decision. Like everything's a decision. You know, I always ask fighters, are you going to win this fight? And they're like, oh, you know, and they, right as they have that, I'm like, you're starting to have doubt. And every fighter has doubt because they have questions. They have, you know, what's his weight? Is he a southpaw? Is he a wrestler? Is he, you know, they're going back from, you know, things that have happened in past fights. And is this the right fight? So they start to question. Any question is doubt. Instead of just, are you going to win this fight? And when you have all those different things to think about, you're starting to oversee what makes people great. And it's just being dialed in and having a roadmap. You have to have a destination. And even if you don't win that fight, doesn't mean you can't get to your destination. You know, you might hit a detour. Does that mean you stop? No, absolutely not. So you have to simplify like what you're going to do. And when you run into those hard moments, overcoming them is everything. It's like a child. Like if you take a child to, you know, a park, and you show up at a park and there's a whole bunch of parking lanes and they're like standing there going, what the hell is this? They got nothing to do. But you take them to a park with obstacles and things to climb, and they climb the monkey bars across, and they only get to 3. At night they're dreaming to get to that 4th one. You know, obstacles are what make us go. That's how we can kind of gauge, are we getting better? Are we getting better? Are we getting better? You know, everybody falls, and it's just how you get up. There was one boxing match that I watched, and it was a Ugandan fighter, and he was undefeated, and one of my favorite fighters to watch. And he was fighting like just a C-level guy. You know, it was on Tuesday night fights back in the day. I used to watch fights all the time. And he's fighting the guy, outclassing him, and then he gets caught with a shot, and the fight gets stopped. And they interviewed the guy who had won, but they interviewed the Ugandan after that, and I'll never forget it. At first, I like thought it was funny because I didn't understand the perspective of what he was saying, and like probably like 10 years later, I remember telling that story and it clicked. And they did an interview, and he had like twisted his ankle when he went down when he got knocked down, and they had like this little air thing that they put on, you know. I've seen this. And they're like talking to him, and he's sitting with his coaches with his hands like this, and they're like, so how's it feel to be knocked down in your first time in your career? And he's like, I was not knocked down. And I remember going, Dave, look at, he's so concussed, he doesn't even remember getting knocked down. And they're like, look on the tape, you know, he got knocked down. He's like, I did not get knocked down. And then I realized he's talking, I'm not knocked down, look, I'm up. Like, you know, just a scenario when you will not accept being down, like, you're never down. You know, it's like people who, when I get around, you know, people who are so excited about winning, who are just afterwards, like Rose one time threw her mouthpiece, I said, stop that shit. Like, that irritates me. Like, you're peaking, don't peak, and don't valley. When you get beat, if you get up and you're like this, you're beat. Like, the best fighters in the world are the ones that don't allow themselves to stay down. Even if they lose the fight, they're training for it right away again, like how the Rocky movies are made. But the ones that win, like it's so easy for them to win. There's so much excitement, there's so much joy, that it is going to be a complete opposite, yin and yang to the opposite when you lose. That you're going to get so down that you're not going to be able to overcome that. And when you just accept performance and not the outcome, growth is always just natural.
I think the most fascinating thing about MMA is just the mental aspect, because it's so mentally challenging. And for us, like, we're competitive golfers and we want to be pro one day. So we've been working with a mental coach, and he always says when it's a tournament or competition or whatever, it's always an opportunity to showcase your skills. It's not life or death. You're going to go home. Your family's still going to love you. The outcome will be the outcome. But if you just focus on an opportunity to show your skills, then everything's going to take care of itself.
Absolutely. Golf is momentum, right? And that's that mental game. Like, if you have one bad shot, I always have the bad shot after the really good shot. Get offside, I'm like, oh man, you see that? I strike it. You swing hard the next time, and you think you got it. Like you know, that's the key, is momentum. Like, again, that peaking and valley. If you're up, okay, it's easy to keep momentum. If you're down, it's so hard to shift momentum. That's sports. Once momentum happens, it's very hard to shift that. But it's the cool, calm consistency that is the key to everything. Yeah. You know, if you get hit with a good shot, don't let it break you. Don't let it change your heart rate. You know, the whole thing is you got to go in there knowing you're going to get hit. And it's like life. You know, you guys had said earlier that life is a fight. Absolutely. This is so similar to every situation in life. Going to court. I've been to court, and there's nothing worse. It's just like a fight. Like, you stay up all night, like, what's going to happen? What's the scenario? And then you go and face it, and there's no better feeling, no matter the outcome. Once you get it passed behind you, it's the key. Like, that's where, it's funny because, like, dating apps, Now they have like this swipe left or right.
Like, left, right.
And I see, these fighters doing this, and I'm like, dude, you get to like choose. I like you, I don't like you. Like when I grew up, like you had to talk to a girl. Like, and that's where I would like really understood what fear was. Like, because it's like if you could talk to the girl, you didn't care about her. There's no value to her. You're like, yeah, I don't care if she says no. Who cares? Like it doesn't matter or anything. But the one that you really like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna ask for a number tomorrow, and then you stay up all day, you practice it in the mirror and shit, you fix those eyebrows before you go out there. And then she's coming and you're like, oh, here's the moment. I remember you have your books in your hand and you just walk right by. You're like, damn! And all day you're so mad at yourself because you couldn't handle the fear. But that's like life. Like life is like, if you value it, it should scare you. And that's why I fell in love with fear, because if you start to look at fear as like it's a gauge, like if something scares you, that means there's value to it. Accept that. Like if there's value to it, if you're playing like when they talked about competition with your golf coach, if there's value to it, it should scare you. It should, everything's going to be the same afterwards. But the whole thing is just understand, be focused, be present, and face it. Again, fear and faith. Like if you don't face it, you have no faith. I always look at the opposites. Like I'm big into perspective, sweet, sour, right? Like everything, every subject has two sides. And that's are you right? Are you wrong? One of the hardest things for me to deal with as a coach now is beating the opponent. That was never hard for me. I just love it. Get joy out of it. I used to always smile. People give a thumbs up. They were like, what the hell is he fucking smiling about? But as over the years that as I'm getting older, like when Justin fought Cowboy, I worked with Cowboy a lot in his career. Like he's from Colorado. And when Justin had put him down and the ref wasn't stopping it, like it jumped out. I didn't think it was going to be hard because I know Cowboys. I talked to him about, we're fighting. Seeing him across the octagon wasn't hard. But seeing him take those punches and the ref wasn't stopping it, that was hard. I left the octagon with Cowboy to walk back with him. He forgot his hat and the thing, so I was like, I left Justin in the octagon. I said, I'm going to go see Cowboy. So I ran back there, got emotional. Grandma was back there. Like that was hard. Like that type of thing, perspective. Even though we win, we're bringing someone back. We're knocking them off of their ride. How long can they ride that money train? And we just cut that off. So that's hard for me. So those types of things is that balance. Like I don't really look at a lot of things as good or bad. It's a part of life, and it's like is it goal setting? And what are your goals? What does it matter for you? And when I'm helping someone else, it's easier. There's been fights where I was beating a guy so bad that I didn't want to hit him no more. It's like you're better than them, and it's like, hey, I don't want to continue this. So I've always had that. So it's good for me to be a coach. But from a perspective standpoint, when you hit that burn scenario, I think it's just awareness of understanding what you really want, because a lot of times, what direction am I going? And when you have everything, and what I mean by everything is like you don't really know what you want. Is it material things? Is it love? Is it spirituality? It's hard to find what you're really looking for until you're in a hard scenario. When you live hard, that's why I love working with there was a Colombian fighter, Juan Carlos Candelo, one of my favorite fighters to work with. He was so grit and he had so much to fight for. And when you have nothing, it's crazy the amount of fight they have in them. Like I've never ever seen him really get hurt with a shot. Like it was just crazy. It's like he couldn't afford to get hurt or get knocked down because he can't go back. And just when you have that mindset, when I ask fighters, are you, that decision of yes, I'll always ask a fighter, if someone breaks into your house and is going to attack your family, you're going to win that fight. And they never have this, let me think here, do they have a gun? Do they have a... No, it's like, absolutely, I'm going to win this one. Like there's no other decision. And when you can simplify things in this world and make it that way, and just do the repetitions, massive action on top of that decision, instead of overthinking, over game planning, those types of things will hold you back.
Tell you what, the little things in life really make you who you are and brings you more joy. Whenever you're having those unfortunate burn moments with like the court case and your lung injury, was there a specific thing that brought you joy during that hard time? Like for me, golf was that one, like, all right, like I'm smiling now, like through all this tough time, I'm finally smiling. So was there anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel humbleness in life when a scenario happens. So my wife just had her car broken into on last Saturday at a dog park. Stole her license, or her purse has her license, or checks. We had to go change all of our bank accounts. And it's like going through that's like a pain in the ass. But like she has these thoughts of like, you know, I hope something bad happens to her. And I'm like, stop that. Like don't even talk that way. And she's like, these bad people. I'm like, first off, perspective, you have no idea what this person's going through. You don't know. Like, you have no idea. Let's say their kid has a medical emergency right now and they need to find money. You would do anything it takes. Did they hurt someone? They ain't hurt you. At least they did it when you weren't in the car. Like, I look at perspectives like that. When you grow up hard and you live a hard lifestyle, you have to find ways. So who am I to judge someone and say something like that? So you start to learn those scenarios that you're human when you're normal. When you don't have no money, you find ways. When you have nothing to eat, you find ways. So it's, again, when you going through tough times in my life, I think are my most pleasurable. Going through losses or where we didn't perform, or where it's like, man, how am I going to get myself out of this scenario? I think those are my favorite points in life. I wouldn't say most comfortable, but my favorite, because that's where you see the spike in growth. That's when you see the spike in love and understanding that you're no different than someone else. Like, again, there's like, I don't go outside my hotel room. I don't do interviews. Like, this is really cool to be on your thing. I don't do interviews because of, I don't look at myself as anything different. The fighter's the one out there performing. They're the one. So I want, you know, the fighter to have that limelight, to be that. I don't want to be a star. I don't want to, I kind of stay behind the curtain a lot, because I don't want to get in that mode of like, man, when you get more money, things change so much. Everything. So again, I like just the simpler life. That's why I like to get up early, be to myself. My favorite times are in my one-on-one moments where I'm present. I'm not thinking about outside things, and I think that's human nature. You know, if you didn't have a grocery store to go to, you're in the hunt. You have to wake up every day to find food. That's present. You're not thinking about tomorrow. You're thinking about today, because I have to have food. You don't think how you're going to cook it. You know, how long is it going to take you to skin it? How am I going to get this animal back if you're hunting for that animal from need? That's wild. And that's why I love, like you know, the boxers that I got to work with, especially in the boxing world, was the street people who came from low income, low countries that have nothing. Their mindset is so simple and so enjoyable. And I really click with that. Because, again, I think present mindset is key to everything. And then, again, going back to the burn moments, when you become calloused and unbreakable, life becomes such a pleasure. Because life throws you things. You know, God will throw you things. You know, however you look at spirituality, I'm not religious, but I look at, like, there is one. And we are all one. It's how we all work together. So, you know, if you can go through life and just look at things as, man, everything's not great, everything's not bad, it just is, then you start to find what fighting teaches you. You know, that's what fighting is. Life is a freaking fight.
Yeah. You said as a kid that you always challenge things. Do you think that's the reason that you have such a perspective on life? Because you have an insane perspective, because I've never even thought of life like that. But the way that you see life, is it because you challenge things as a kid?
Yeah, I was just a wild kid, so I was like, you know, when I was told, you know, different things, you know, it's so I had a teacher when I moved to Connecticut from Arizona. I was in pre-algebra, and we had to do this homework assignment, and I did the homework assignment, and I got all the answers right, but the teacher told me I wasn't doing the problem right. He's like, because they taught how to do pre-algebra different than they did in Arizona. Couldn't understand it. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with JP that I thought I sucked at math because I could not figure out their way of doing it, because I was taught a certain way at a different, you know, through, you know, your prac math and going through those levels, that I actually thought I sucked at math.
And it's like one of my strongest points. And he's like, dude, you suck at math. I went into your basement and you got all these rulers and you got these graphs drawn out on a table for cutting patterns. He's like, and problem solving. And he's like, that's math. And I was like, turn my head to the side. I clearly knew where that point came from. So it's just, again, like perspective is everything. It's like we want to learn and we want to understand everything in life. Look at it from two sides. I use an example for perspective has like really changed my life. And again, like understanding like judgment and people's opinions and things like that. Me and my wife don't argue at all. And I'm blessed for that. Like I love my wife. She loves me. Like I have the best relationship. And I have people all the time like, how do you guys get along so good? And I'm like, I never challenge her ideas. And she's always right. And people are like, oh, that's funny. And I'm like, honestly, she is. If she is telling me that hey, you know, this is how it is, that's her perspective. She's sitting on that side of the table. She's on that side of the table. And she goes, that's the right side of the table. I'm like, no, that's the left side of the table. We're always going to click. And she's a female. I'm a man, a yin and yang, opposite, like, you know, opposites attract. When I tell her that in that scenario, then she instantly backs off and then she wants to hear my perspective. Well, why? You know, you're right. And then I get to explain my way where I'm right. You know, I'm wrong to her if we thought that way, and she'd be wrong to me. Again, it's just that backward spiral of just like, it's perspective. How do you see it? You know, if I say I like vanilla ice cream, you're like, oh man, chocolate's the best. Absolutely, it's just your choice. But we get stuck in these mindsets of, I like it this way, and you know, that's where clicks start to happen. That's where, again, when we're all one and we can accept that, perspective is one of the best things you can have in this world. And when you're fighting, like boxing, they'll push you and say, yo mama this, yo mama that. Like that's funny to me because people can get in your head by saying that because you're like, man, my mama's going through some shit right now. You know, nice. You don't even know. You don't even, that opponent has never met your mama. But like to be able to do that, like they get underneath your skin. And one of the worst things in this, in fighting is where you beat yourself. And when you're fighting because you're mad, you fight like shit. You fight horrible. When you're making life decisions because you're mad, life is horrible. If I just found out bad news and I'm pulling up and getting gas, I don't care if the gas is $2.99. That's a good price. I'll be like, damn, gas prices are way too high. It's perspective. It's the glasses that you're wearing at that moment. And when you can accept things and just deal with them, problems are easy to solve. You know, then you become like a solution guy instead of a problem guy where, you know, again, perspective. Problem, you can't have a solution without a problem. That's a cool thing. So we need problems. That's how we evolve. But a lot of times we get stuck in this mindset of like, life is hard on me, life is this, life is that. Life is just life. There's not one person, I think, on this world that hasn't been through a traumatic situation. But we go into things like this is why I'm doing this, because I've had to deal with this. You know, relationships that had problems. Well, I had a bad relationship, and that bad relationship affects that relationship and the next 5 relationships because they can't accept. They think it's done to them. No, that person's doing it because that's who they are. Like my wife's purse being stolen. They didn't do that to my wife. They weren't like, oh, I know this lady. Screw her. I'm gonna get her purse and I'm gonna make her throw the ID, throw the cash that you had out there. Yeah. You know, just so you have to go get a new ID, a motor vehicle. You know, you think it's done to you, and that's the whole thing, is like, it's a perspective. Why did that person have to steal that purse? You don't know where they're at. Someone drives by you and flips you off on a thing, on a highway. Say you get them over the road, you kick their ass. And that kid, that guy is trying to, you're in the slow lane, only going 2 over the speed limit, and he's trying to get to a call that he just got, his kid was in a car accident. You kick his ass, yeah, you're gonna feel real good kicking his ass. So that's kind of that scenario of like you don't know what you don't know. So that's why I love perspective. If you start to really put perspective in your life, you start to see life in a different light.
That's for sure. After my accident, I viewed life from a perspective, and it's just like, enjoy the little things. Whenever there's something that goes wrong, bad test grade, bad day at the podcast or whatever, just smile. It's life. Like, no one's perfect. And I think that's where most people have success whenever they're smiling and loving what they're doing. But the people who aren't are just usually like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Let me sleep in. Let me watch football this Saturday and Sunday. And that's what I love about you, is you put life in a perspective and it's awesome.
It took a lot of time though. Like like when I was a kid, I used to have that hard shell, and walk around with an angry look on my head, looking for fights. You know, it's one of those things that it takes time to kind of to practice that and learn that. You know, it's like the fighters. You get so many guys that come into a gym, and I understand it because I remember going into gyms. You have to put on that front, like you tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you go to prison. You have to have that front, and you're like, you ain't gonna fuck with me. But when you have guys that come into the gyms and they act tough and they're like, oh, I'm undefeated in the street. Like you hear that shit so much owning the gym, and that just cracks me up because I just know you're soft. You know, it's fake. Like you trying to be tough. Like there's that shell. Like it's like, you know, it's when you guys have met a lot of successful fighters, and when you meet a successful fighter and a high level guy, they don't have to put on a front. They're some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet, and that's because it's not an image. They're confident. They're confident in what they do.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times fighting isn't the end all be all for them too.
Yep.
It's just there's a lot of other things that occupy their time, which allows them to be free when they do fight. And it also kind of drives that hunger too, to keep going, because especially when you get to the mountaintop, it's like, oh, I made it, but like, what's next?
There's never an end.
Yeah, and that's what I like respect someone like Kamaru Usman is like he got to the top, but he was always so hungry to keep going. And a lot of times it's hard to see.
Yeah, he had told me and Justin, because he had asked for the Kazmat fight, and Justin was like, why is he calling out that fight? And so I was like, all right, I'll ask him, you know. I'm the coach, I'm the co-pilot, so whatever track you want to race, cool, let's go, you know. And so I called him, I was like, hey, so, you know, what's the reason behind that? He's like, he's the best out there. I want the best. And just his whole mindset of just always facing the best. You can't go backwards. When you win a championship, that's the crazy thing. I was addicted to belts. I wanted to be a champion as a boxer, and then I was injured and had to find a different way. And I remember with Vernal Phillips, we, like 2 years into boxing, that first year of having a pro, I had a world championship. And I remember getting the belt back to the locker room. I looked at it, I was like, I was so let down. It looked so good on TV, especially the boxing belts. Yeah. There were like rubies missing. There were like rubies put in crooked. I was like, damn, it was a cheap belt.
They did this one from eBay.
Oh, my God, I was blown away. So then it was like, the cool part was like, all right, we got to get the WBA now. It's like, oh, you know, chase that one. And then you get that one, you're like, oh, you know, it's when you get there, it just is. Like you have these dreams. I always like talk about it like a vacation. Like everybody dreams about, oh, I'm gonna go to Florida. Oh, I can't wait for this vacation. It's the journey that's the funnest part. It's the wonder. You know, what's it gonna be like? That's the key to everything. And when you can look at it from that piece, you start to really love that present moment. And you think about a trip, it's like, oh man, it's gonna be everything. And you get there, and it rains for the first 2 days, and then you get out the third day, the sand is so damn hot. You're like, damn, it's burning my feet. Yeah. You know, then, you know, you get out there, get a sunburn, can't go outside. You know, you go to a restaurant, your service is bad. It's the same damn thing in a different environment. Like everybody's like, oh, they want to get away to have a better life, where it's no different. Like the whole thing is, it's like you're always gonna have your same whatever's going on in your life. It's the journey. And if you can enjoy the journey, you're going to enjoy each one of those. You're going to enjoy the rain. Oh, I get to relax now. I'm off of work, so I don't even have to go out to the beach. Like you get to look at it from perspective. What is the benefit? There's always a benefit to every scenario. But there's also like a downfall. Like one conversation I always have, because everybody's like, oh, you know, if you lose, you learn. You know, it's, you know, a pretty common thing that's talked about right now. When you win, it gets very easy to get relaxed. You know, I always talk about people when they go out there and they knock someone out in the first round. You know, I always like, if I'm watching fights with fighters, I'm like, watch his next fight. It's going to be one of his hardest fights. Guarantee it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because he at home like, woo, look at that thing. That thing, look at that thing. He's sink missile right there. And they go out there and have a battle because they trained so hard for that fight. And they went out there and then boom, one shot landed. It was like, oh, it was easy. And when it gets easy, you get relaxed. And it's very easy to fall off that track, and that's one thing that we speak a lot with my athletes is make sure, you know, it's when we win a fight, we go back and we critique what could we have done better. We're always on ourselves, like, hey, where could we be a little better? Not change everything. Like, where did we have holes? Where did we make mistakes? There's some fights where, you know, the one thing I can't stand is where you have a fight where it could go either way, and you almost see like the one person like don't even know if he's confident to win, and then he gets the win. And then he don't even care about was it a close decision. He won. And it drives me crazy. It's like just be real with your performance and be true to self. Like truth is everything. If you can critique yourself, another hard question I ask fighters is, how would you beat yourself? And it's always hard for a fighter. What do you mean, how would I beat myself? And I'm like, you need to know how to beat yourself. And if you don't, you're so breakable. Like if you think you're invincible, that's where you see a lot of fighters who can go undefeated and they lose one fight and they can't win a fight. Tony Ferguson, prime example. Like they understand losing, and they're just like their little ways is what made them great. Like, oh, I'm unbreakable. And then they don't understand how to get past that. You know, but the people who go out there and say, oh man, I could lose any fight, and they're scared, and they're like, man, I might lose this, and they win. They understand that piece to it. They understand they're human. They understand that they're no different than anybody else. Again, that rankings. When I ran gyms, I hated rankings in the gyms. People who walked around like I'm in the UFC. You're just an amateur. I hate that shit. Like, you know. So I rode professional on snowboarding, and I got to ride with Jeff Brushy and Craig Kelly. And Craig Kelly, he passed away. Bless his heart. But I was on a chairlift with him. And he had looked down at the guy and he like laughed at this guy. It's like falling all over the place. I remember thinking in my head, and I'm only like 18 at that time. I remember thinking in my head, damn, you started too. You know, what'd your first day look like? And I remember it was just like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Why is it rankings? People forget where they come from. So it's just, again, the balance.
You never know what's going on in their life too, so.
You never know.
This portion of the Burn Factory podcast is sponsored by Phoenix Salon Suites. Please visit Phoenix Salon Suites at PHENIX Salons SALON Suites SUITES.com to find one near you.
As you guys may know, I was tragically burned in a school science experiment by my teacher that gave me a 50% chance to survive. And through that, I have to wear sunscreen every day for the rest of my life. And as being a golfer, the brand I trust is Kula.
Man, look at this bottle. Kula. This just screams beaches, waves, and sun. So let's give this a smell.
The nice wind of a Tropicana breeze.
This is smelling like Hawaii, our favorite place. So next time you guys need sunscreen, go get yourself Kula. You'll thank us later. All right, Trevor, well, it's time to go on to R. R is ridiculous. Your unfortunate times really build you to who you are, and I think it really allowed you to have such an amazing perspective on life. But R is ridiculous. So are there any ridiculous burn moments that you could share with us? You talked about in Connecticut and sparring.
Yeah. So ridiculous, I'd say, my dad, when I told him I was going to be a professional boxing coach, he laughed at me. He's like, you're too fucking nice. He's like, you'll never make it. You know, and I'd never, when he had told me I'd never make it because I was so nice, which is, it's great critique. I remember I went out and just started smiling purposely. And it's like, boxing was like the mafia of all, industries, like from sports standpoint. Like, I was young. I started, coaching at 19, maybe 20. It was like 19, 20. And when he told me that, I was like, oh, every time he sees me on the TV, I'm going to smile and I'm going to show him I'm going to do it. A nice guy's going to do it. And I think that's like one of the most ridiculous things I could do, to just kind of brag and show someone the arrogance that I had, that I could do it that way, that it stuck with me. And I was only smiling just, and then I could tell it was affecting the opponents across from the ring. They were like, what the hell is this?
Why is he smiling?
Like, acting all tough with their entourage, like it's just such a front. And I'm just doing it as a joke to get my dad back, for telling me I can't do it. And I'll never forget, Vertil was facing, I don't remember who we were facing, but it was in Connecticut at Foxwoods. And he's like, bro. And he's from, he lived in Belize for a while and Brooklyn for a while, like tough dude. And he's a 4-time world champion. And he tells me, he's like, yo, bro, you gotta be hard in the corner, bro. Like, they ain't gonna respect us. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm coachable. I went out there, had my eyes all down when we were looking across the thing. And right after the fight had happened, we won the fight. And he always watches the fights afterwards. He calls me, he's like, yo, bro, you remember how I say you gotta be hard in the corner? He's like, yeah, go back to smiling, man. It's funny, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous because it wasn't me at the moment. It would have been a lot easier back in the day, but I wasn't as smooth, I wasn't as calm. Like, it's having that smile and doing it for a reason actually allowed me to be better at what I did because I got comfortable. I enjoyed it. I
Sorry, that's for my push-ups. I do 20 push-ups every hour.
Really?
Yeah.
So how many do you do a day?
8 to 8, so what was that, 220?
Yeah.
I used to do 100 before I go to bed, but I kind of got off the
Yeah,
track.
it's hard to do a lot in a row. So
Uh-huh.
my issue is my lower back, and I started having all sorts of core issues, and my body was just breaking down. I'm 48 years old, so I was like, ice bath helped me, but I started doing push-ups every day, and man, it helped me. And I don't have time to work out and like do a full workout. And I'm hitting mitts with guys all the time, but I have to be in shape, especially when they're killing my body like these guys crack me. And I just started feeling old. I thought I was gonna have to get like a pimp cane, and started doing push-ups, so it helped.
Really?
One thing
stick to
is,
it, yeah.
I do a handstand 1 minute a day. And,
Nice.
And I
That's
can't
really
tell
good.
you the benefits I feel from like digestion and like the mental clarity.
Yeah,
So
it's really good.
I might have to try that one out.
The hanging upside down is really good.
Yeah.
And that don't take much effort. It's still hard,
yeah, no,
You
it's
don't
hard.
get all lightheaded.
Yeah, well, after I did it for like 2 days straight, and I woke up the next day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am so sore. That was
I bet.
my back. And
Yeah.
I was like,
That's
"Damn."
stabilizing yourself. That's hard.
I know. Good. I need
Probably
to
good for your
straighten my
brain, too.
spine. Anyways, it's a little too crooked from golf. So, but going back to that's a burn moment. Whenever your dad said that, why you're gonna coach your team.
Yeah, so I was used to it. I didn't take it as offense, which I took a lot of things to offense. Because he was a hardcore dad. He was like, we had a lot of bang head issues, but I respect it because he would challenge me at things. But that moment of him telling me in that sense that he was just telling the truth. Like he was just like, yeah, man, you're in the boxing world. Like boxing world is a whole different world, like whole different in all sports. And he's just like, you ain't gonna make it. Very much like, how are you gonna make it? You too damn nice. You get taken advantage of somehow. And I did get taken advantage of many different areas in business, and with fighters and things like that. But I didn't look at it from that standpoint. It was just like me saying, like, you think my character, because my character, I can't do it. So it was just like, every time I see you, like,
Do you think if he didn't tell you that, do you think you would smile at all still, or no? Or is it?
I don't think absolutely, I don't think I would. I don't think I was doing it as an amateur coach. I go out there with a calm face, but I like purposely smile.
Yeah.
Like that's like kind of become my thing. It's kind of funny. Like everybody's like,
There's a bunch of
he's a
memes out
smile
there.
guy. It's funny because I'll be like somewhere that someone's like, it kind of looks like someone I know. And then if I smile, they're like, dude, you're Trevor Wittman.
I love it. I know.
Yeah, no, but I did do a study on smiling, and they say like if you literally just smile, it makes you happy. It brings joy to you just by smiling. So after I hit a bad shot in golf, I try to. I don't always do it, but I try to just smile and just laugh it off. It happens.
Yeah, totally. So that's kind of funny because I have the worst dad jokes, and I believe the main reason why I do it is I keep the locker room light. So I'm always telling the most stupidest shit. And we're in the locker rooms, I'll just create a moment, I'm very witty, and just to keep the environment light for the athletes. So they're not thinking about the fight and distract them.
What is it like in the locker room before the fight? What's the mood? What's the feeling?
It's awesome. Like dialed in. Like I love that. Like I when I get to see my fighters' pupils open, like it's crazy. It's like it's very unique. You can see like the chemicals in the body work, and the pupils get very dilated. Their goosebumps are like, it's funny. You'll look at them and it seems like the room is cold because their goosebumps are fired, like mine right now, just thinking about it. Because your nerve endings are turned on. Like all your sensors are just ready. Like it's a serious moment, but it's a cool flowing moment. I know there's been times where it wasn't comfortable, or like you're like wondering about the fight. But over years and years and years of experience, it's just like enjoy the moment. And that's things I talk to athletes about, like make sure you know where the locker room is, look around. Like the journey is the most important part. If you're not thinking about the journey, you're in the fight already again, wasting energy.
Be in the moment.
Be in the moment. Look at the locker room. You're not there yet. Stop letting your heart rate raise too much.
Would you say you're more nervous coaching a fight or actually fighting?
Coaching, not no more. I've gotten very consistent because it used to be like it's a responsibility, and I'd worry about what could happen to them, and that would always affect me and make me nervous. So then I started thinking, all right, I got to perform. So I'd always have I visualize in the shower every time I go out to the fight, and I put myself in worst case scenarios, and how I'd react to that situation and what I'd do in this scenario. So my focus is on performance. So I have to perform for them. and makes it very easy when you're relying on someone else, like you're tackling field, like a fighter. If they have a child, I talk about their child a lot. Like now they got them with them, so that they're not going to make a mistake. Like stay focused, don't let your ego fight. And when you're doing it for someone else, it just makes it a lot easier to make decisions instead of let your ego take over. So yeah, but it's I've been nervous in corners a lot, but it's gotten easier. It's gotten a lot easier.
The more you do it, probably the more less nervous you get. Kind of like.
And again,
golf.
it's that love with fear, you know. That moment is the best. Like I love it. There's nothing better.
Yeah, I there was a saying, hindsight, didn't mean to cut you off, but like at the maximum point of fear, you experience the most joy, and I think that is 100% spot on.
Absolutely. So there's a pain story I want to talk about. There's a guy named David. He used to come into our gym and watch all our guys spar, and this is at Grudge Training Center, which was like a top 5 gym back in the day, and he would come in and he was paralyzed and he had a wheelchair with a little piece. He'd drive himself around, and then he started getting like a dog that he'd come with, you know, a golden retriever. And he was in there for 2 years, you know, every Saturday. And Rashad was just coming back from surgery, and Rashad is sparring, and he gets ran into by the side on someone on his knee, and he drops down, and he's like in pain, like on the ground, and he's like holding his knee. And I'm like, damn, like that was where we were training for the Rampage fight. And I look at it and I'm like, he's gonna have to, you know, he's out for 2 years. And just got back into the gym, and I look over and David's like laughing. And it pissed me off. I was like, the fuck, I'm letting you come in here, watch these guys. And I was just like in a bad state of mind too, because, you know, I just seen Rashad get hurt. And so when David was leaving, probably 30 minutes later, I seen him going out the back door because the van would come and pick him up in the back. And I was like, David, hey, I was like, can I ask you something? And he's like, oh yeah, what's up? And I was like, you like being here? And he's like, oh, I love it so much. And I was like, you don't like Rashad? And he's like, oh man, I love Rashad. And I was like, oh, I was just wondering because you were like laughing when he was on the ground. He's like, oh no. He's like, I just wish I could feel pain. And I was like, isn't that crazy? Not a tickle, not a touch, not love. Like, he said, I wish I could feel pain. So that's crazy. So that to me was like a perspective moment, like where you look at things like you think you have it bad. Someone wants to feel pain because he can't feel nothing. That's crazy. Like that to me, simplicity of like, in my perspective of what I thought he was, like I thought he was like, he got joy out of seeing someone in pain because he's like, oh man. And another thing is I found out that he was only paralyzed for like 4 years at that time. I thought he was paralyzed his whole life. It was just something I thought. His body was all, you know, very thin. Looked like it was like that his whole life. And he was cliff jumping in the water, and like in college, which is crazy. You imagine? So he got to feel pain before. So he wanted to feel that. Like he looked at it like, I want a knee injury, you know? I can't even get a knee injury. Like that's crazy to me.
Well, I think that's where you grow the most too, is in those painful moments.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. I think you just wanted the opportunity just to be able to grow again.
Absolutely.
Mentally,
to do something
everything.
you can't. You know, and that's the thing is like simplicity in life. Like find what you love, find what scares you. Chase it, face it, you know. Like if it scares you, it keeps you up at night, that's good. That's a good
Some
thing.
good stuff right there.
That's a good thing.
And don't take for granted the little things in life.
The little things.
Yeah, whether it's brushing your teeth or literally going outside to get fresh air, because
Throwing a ball with your son. I had a C7 compression fracture snowboarding when my son was 2 years old, and I just started throwing the ball with him, and I thought I was paralyzed. Like I couldn't move my feet. I looked at my feet. I had these boogers like this. Like I had crashed so hard on a snowboard doing a gap. And this is after I wasn't snowboarding professional at this time. I was just out with my buddy showing off. And I ollied off a jump where you're supposed to clear the gap, and I ollied, went straight up and was like, shit. And came down on my shoulders, on my neck. But I remember it like knocked me out for a second. Then I kind of woke up as I was just ending my slide. And this girl comes over and she's like, mister, are you okay? And I'm like, leave me alone. Like, I'm cool. And I'm like laying there, and I got this ring through my body like a funny bone. And it's like ringing through my whole body. I can't move my bindings or boots. I remember laying there, and it's crazy what goes through your mind in that scenario. It wasn't, you know, it was, I can't throw a ball at my son. What's his friends going to think?
Like it was those thoughts, like crazy. And then I started getting my feet to move, and I remember hearing if you get a movement, keep going. I ended up going down another time and didn't go to the doctor. Nothing. Found out 2 years later that it was a compression fracture. And they're like, oh, what'd you do with your neck? I even went and see the chiropractor who didn't do x-rays. And he's like, oh, you got a jammed neck. Let me try to crack it. So it's crazy, right?
That could have been dangerous, though.
So much stupid decisions by myself. I don't need to see a doctor. Yeah, because once I got my feeling back, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I think I just rigged my body. But dude, found out like 2 years later. I got x-rays and they're like, when'd you get the compression fracture? I was like, I know exactly when.
You said before you were a professional snowboarder?
Yeah. So from Marl, yeah.
You're a professional snowboarder?
No, back in the day,
Oh, back in the day you were?
Yeah, I got taken out of school for that. It was the best. I thought my dad was sending me to military school. I was like, oh my God, he brought me to dinner and he's like, all right, we're going to send you up to Vermont. I was like, oh no.
What's over there?
I thought I was going to like military school or something. And got a GED and went snowboarding.
Oh, wow. What's your favorite mountain to snowboard here?
Probably Copper because it's long, no lift lines, fast lifts. Yeah, I love it. My wife loves it every Thursday. Like I have to fake injuries to get, like, 'cause my wife won't survive from the time it opens to. And I'm tired after like 4 runs. I'm shot. You
Hold
know?
up my hamstring.
Yeah, I'll fake injuries. I'm like, oh, we all know. But yeah, she loves it. She loves it every Thursday. We go on the weekday, so I take one day off during a weekday, and then I work through the weekends because that's my time. I get a lot of alone time. But yeah, there's no traffic. Yeah, super cool.
Nice. We went to Breckenridge in February and snowboarded.
Nice.
That was fun.
I took a big spill.
Yeah.
Big spill. I'll have to show you when we're done the video.
It's fun. It's fun.
It's
It's like my favorite thing. That's like, so I go with Justin, and everybody's like, you need to stop. And I'm like, dude, falling and tumbling is one of the best things you can have for fighting. Like you see him tumble when people try to take him out. He's one of the best fallers ever. Like he is so fun to ride with, and me too. I like it. I like that. Unless I don't do big gaps no more. Like I'm done with that. Absolutely. I'm like, yeah. After that, I was like, yeah, I'm not getting paid to do this. Not doing it.
Yeah.
You have to give us some lessons.
It's
We're
fun,
okay.
yeah,
We
absolutely.
went down a few blues, but
Yeah,
I'm
once
trying
you
to get
catch
up
it,
to black.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
I do a, gosh, the worst is whenever, so how funny is this? We lived in Colorado for 10 years and we never went snowboarding. I never did. He went once, and whenever we moved to California, I went snowboarding more living there than I had here. And I'll never forget, we were with our instructor, and they teach you on the blue. They don't teach you on like the little like.
It's better though.
Because you learn it faster.
You can't ride it. You can't go on flat.
Exactly.
So your balance is you can't use an edge.
So we were doing the toe stops where you're going backwards, and you like it. Gosh, I'm literally laughing because of how bad it hurts. So you literally go down, and then my heel
Catch an edge. Yeah.
catching,
Slam your head.
boom, boom, you just start rolling down the mountain, and you're just like, oh my gosh, all right, I'm done with this one. But it's fun. Like
Snowboard is fun.
Yeah, but and then after that happened, I just laughed it off.
I've
and I
had
was like,
4
it's fun.
concussions snowboarding, not 1 in boxing. Isn't that crazy?
Really?
There's one I woke up, it was the funniest. I was showing off for this girl. So we're in Connecticut, and I would night ride every day at this hill called Powder Ridge is the funnest. Every night after school, I go up there and just ride. And I was up there, and there's this girl I like from school. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's this jump at the bottom. It's really icy this night, night especially, in Connecticut, ice. And I'm going, and I hit this jump to do like a 360 nose grab. And I turn, and I'm going down the hill this way. My tail catches the snow. Yeah, there was another one where I knocked myself out, and then I'm like laying there, and the snow's going by me, and I'm all, I can't really move because the wind's knocked out of me. And I remember getting up and trying to act like I wasn't hurt. I like rode down to the bottom to the bench. And they're like these small little runs, Powder Ridge. And I remember sitting there, and all of a sudden I woke up, like, I remember that spot, but then I remembered that spot like 3 days later. But I'm sitting there on the bench, and I'm like, how'd I get here?
Yeah.
Where'd I park? Yeah. Who's with me? Like, I kept having like the same questions over and over. Like, you're at a ski parking lot. There's like 3 different parking lots. I like didn't know if I was by myself, and I'm on this bench. I'm like, dude, what day is it? Yeah, snowboard's fun.
It is fun. But, all right, Trevor, it's time to go to N. N is 2 parts. It's now and next. So are there any burn moments you're going through right now? And are there any burn moments that you see coming in the future?
Yeah, so a burn moment right now, all of our stuff is in storage for Onyx. Our lease is up, but we got a new building. Like at first it was like, oh my gosh. Like, so right before Justin's fight, we're probably 8 weeks out. And we get a message from our landlord, who our landlords are just awesome over there, where we've been there for 5 years. And we were doing year-to-year lease, which I've never had with the landlord. They never raised the rent on us. It was gross, so they're paying for the water, the heat, like just a perfect scenario. And then in April, they're like, hey, your lease is up end of May. So in June, we're gonna need the place, and they've always told us that they might outgrow and need it. And it was like my bad for not even thinking about that. I got comfortable because every year we did another year. And they're like, yeah, we need the space. So we started looking for spaces, couldn't find nothing, like for the size, because we're like, perfect timing for us. Like we do need to expand. We need more space. But just trying to find a spot, like crazy. Like I was stressing so bad. Justin's fight coming up, so they let us stay an extra month to be able to, keep the gym area for him to train. And that was a big concern of mine because it's like, what are we going to do? Like that's a big comfortability for us, is that private one-on-one, no distractions. But then we ended up finding a building that's just way better, brand new, build it to our brand, double the size, right on the foothills, 9 minutes away from my house compared to 12 minutes. I was looking at places that were like an hour away just because it's raised so much. But that's a burn moment. And finding manufacturing, like manufacturing has been one of the hardest things for us to do. And I think we've dialed that in, which has been one of the biggest struggles for Onyx. So those burn moments are finally at the point of now we're getting that shift into finding something that's even better. So, going through that struggle, that's been very hard for me, especially when it's out of my control. Now it's like shifting into even better. It's like, you're in that scenario and you're like, how is this even going to be beneficial? And you just look back at it. Every time you look back at it, you're like, dude, why was I even thinking like that? Because you have to catch yourself. You always have those moments where you're like, how am I going to overcome this? Because it's real. But yeah, that's
got to get your gloves in the UFC next.
Yeah,
that's got to be a burn moment coming up.
That'd be great. It's get the gloves into the UFC, but not just the UFC. It's we need to change the standard in fight gloves. For performance. If it's hard to squeeze, to make a fist, that doesn't just affect my punching. It affects injuries. It affects grip strength. It affects a lot of things from a performance standpoint. If I hurt my hand in a fight, and I break my right hand, I'm now fighting with the left hand. For everybody's paying pay-per-view money to watch a fight, and I'm pulling back and surviving through a fight because I injured my hand. It's not a good scenario. And a fight being stopped because of pokes, things like that. I don't think there's any glove out there that's ever going to stop finger pokes with the fingers being exposed. But there's things that can definitely bring that down a lot. But I think it's being in the UFC, being in all the organizations is a great thing. But my number one goal with Onyx is elevating this industry that has helped me so much. And whether it's the person buying gloves for the first time, buying instructionals, it's about how do I externalize that internal champion that everybody has. So that's really my mission, and that's what's next with Onyx, is spreading it worldwide and continue to grow people's mindsets.
Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Exactly.
What makes your gloves different from the UFC gloves?
So UFC gloves it's the same design that they had from Wano when they brought gloves, because it was bare knuckle prior to that. And Wano was the first maker of that glove, and it's like kind of like a gardening glove. It's shaped like this for your hand to be open. And then they put a pad on top. So if you take like a normal glove and you put pad on it, and there's no cuts or slits in the glove, you can't bend it. So if you look at like a hockey glove, it's very similar. It's got very thin leather on this side, but there's cuts and creases in it. But you can't do that with a hockey glove, because then you're going to expose little parts. So figuring that out has been very tough. But also with like an MMA glove, they don't protect. Number one break in MMA is the number 2 metacarpal, which is the pointer knuckle. Where boxing is like mine, which is the number 5 metacarpal, because it's like short hooks, because you're fighting inside, we're head to head. MMA, you're further away. MMA and kickboxing are further distance, so I reach with shots. So I end up reaching with that, you hit with one knuckle, one bone, all that pressure of that shot goes to one bone. And they don't pad around this side. Yeah. Like Ronda Rousey one time got 9 stitches in her hand on the number 2 metacarpal. Look it up, it's crazy. How you get cut on your hand?
Especially with the wrap on too.
It's because you're hitting bone to bone on this piece. Like if I hit like that, I'm hitting bone to bone. I'm not hitting with any pad. And that's like, who cares? Like if it hits the head and causes a cut, like that's part of fighting. But breaking a hand,
it's a game changer.
Sucks.
Yeah, and the thumb, with the thumb being exposed too.
Yeah. Thumb, you almost need it from a grappling standpoint. They do have an MMA piece to it, which
like in boxing gloves, you injure your thumb a lot. Like if you hit something miscorrect because your thumb's in like a position like this, so it'll come off. That's actually why they attach the thumb in boxing, so you don't get those injuries. Like Muhammad Ali used to do this after his fights. Like, that was a good fight. But yeah, missing, that sucks. Yeah. But if you don't have nothing in front of you, it's very easy to curl your thumb in, so you shouldn't hurt your thumb. And then you got, great grip.
People grapple with it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And give thumbs up after you win,
I've always wondered why some UFC fighters don't tape their thumbs, and some do.
That's again, it's comfortability and not knowing what you don't know. I get it. Like, there's people that wrap your hands and you feel like your hand's almost like this. Now I can't use my hand, so they don't want that. But to be able to get full support on the back of the hand, you need to have something that's supporting to it. And if I don't have something supporting these ways here, then I can move my hand. So having this piece to wrap to really allows you to support, behind the hand to, protect from breaks and things like that. So it's just not knowing. And again, bad experiences will cause you to do that, because there's a lot of people that will not wrap their thumb, and I'm like, man, you are not protected. You might as well just put on a wrist thing.
Yeah.
Scary.
So do you wrap your fighters' hands?
I wrap every one of my athletes' hands.
You don't let the cut people do it?
Nope, because they don't know my fighter. They don't know if they like it tight. Every fighter is different. Some people like more knuckle pads. Some people like really tight fist. Everybody is different. So getting to know that with your fighter is everything, and it'll never change. If you go, when you're in the locker room scenarios, the pre-moments are everything. Again, momentum. What's happening? When you get a glove and they're like, hey, you can't wear that glove, or you put a glove on and it doesn't fit, and I'm like, hey, I need a bigger glove, and they're like, we don't have a bigger glove. I can't get it through my hand wrap. Like, those little scenarios suck. And then when you get, someone wrapping your hands and they're like, dude, I'm your biggest fan.
Yeah.
Dude, you're dealing with like other people talking to your person. Like, you need to hone them in and stay dialed into them for their mentality. You don't want no distractions. As least as possible. You know?
Do you talk to them whenever you're doing their hand wraps, or just
depends? Every scenario is different. If I see them going off into a different place in a different zone, absolutely. Sometimes I'll joke, sometimes I'll snap them out of things, sometimes I'll be very serious with them. So it's just kind of knowing. When you get that time with your athlete, that's where I think there's a difference between a teacher and a coach. A coach is going to know you almost like a father would know a child. Like, you have to know, what buttons to piss them off. You got to know what buttons to cool them down, how to relax them, how to challenge them. And, especially when you're in there with the corner, you got to know how to get information to them and make them believe it.
Especially in like a 1 minute stand in between the rounds.
Absolutely. And it's also prior. Like, there's some times where there's not much that needs to be said in the corner, and, you're saying it while the fight's going on. It's every scenario is different. And that's just knowing your athlete. Again, your body language and yeah. Like, there was a rule that you weren't able to stop MMA fights for a while, and I thought that was crazy. Only the doctor or referee could stop it. They changed that, but I thought that was crazy. Yeah, because the only person that knows their body language, like if someone starts, bending weird, you're like, hey, something's going on neurologically, like, that's crazy. Like, they should be the one that should be stopping the fight and knowing that,
Yeah. Speaking of corners, will you be in Rose's corner for your next fight?
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I have to be dialed in from a standpoint that, it's there's a lot of things going on in our corners, and I want to kind of keep that behind doors. But again, it's I take this very seriously. I take this very seriously, and I love her to death. And I love her and Pat's relationship more than a professional piece, and that's what matters to me. And I love those guys, but I'm also very, very truthful and very straightforward with how I am with things. I don't play the, again, excuses, things like that, and also lack of performance. Like, it's up to you to perform.
Yeah, for sure. How hard is it though? Like, whenever
and that makes it very tough. Like, I've lost relationships over being honest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no. But sometimes you got to be honest though.
Absolutely.
You gotta
like I said, if you're like a father, like if I'm a friend to them, I can tell them exactly what they want to hear. But being like a father, like, it's like, honestly, I'm out here for you, to see you get better, and that's my job. That's what I get paid to do, and I want to see you grow in life. Like, I don't coach to help you win MMA fights. I coach you to understand, like, excuses and making things up, and for comfortability in moments. It's not how life works. Just being real. Like, who cares?
Yeah, gotta be real with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what fans say, you know, like, again, we're there in the entertainment business. Like, we have to respect that. But from like a scenario of like, who cares? Like, you should be the one that's ultimately making that decision. Am I performing? Did I give my best? You know, that's all I care about.
Leave no doubt.
Yeah, and it's just you have to give your best. Don't get through a fight. Like and I'll be real about a situation. There's one thing that really bothered me in the fight, that my last corner I was with him, was she's facing Carla Esparza, and Pat was the lead corner. So I stepped back and kind of just allowed things to be said. And he had said, "You hear these boos?" And I was like, what is he going to say about these boos? Because they were booing. You know, she's like just staying on the outside, which understandable in the beginning. She's, you know, Carla's a great grappler. And he had said, "These boos mean you're winning." And I was like, what does that even mean? And then prior to going into there, she had just awesomely brought her grandma out from Lithuania and is taking care of her grandma. Grandma doesn't like fighting. So he had said, "Hey, don't get beat up this fight because your grandma don't like it. Get through this fight." And I was like, that's like the best way to get hurt in this sport, is getting through a fight. So those were scenarios where I'm just like, I have to be the lead corner or can't be there. You know, so, and I love them to death. I love them
you just
to
want the
death.
best for them.
Yeah, I was in there on the phone with them throughout this whole camp and talking to them and being there for them. But I think it's better off that way. And their relationship means more to me than again a professional piece. She's accomplished everything, and I do think if she has the right person in front of her, that it's scary to her. She's the best. Rose is probably the most talented person when she is in the right mindset. She is amazing.
I'm the best.
I'm the best. Affirmations, like, be scared. Like, you have to face something, like you are living with that. Like, she is the best when she's in that mode. But when you're getting through it, like, I remember shadow boxing like 10 feet out from Carla, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, crazy.
Got to put it all on the line. It's a title
Yeah,
fight.
and the whole thing is like they were happy afterwards, and I'm like, you can't be happy. Like, this is a real thing.
That's the game. That's how the game goes.
But
It's the fight game.
It's your life, not mine, so I love it. I respect it.
But that's what makes the sport
And it's easy
so
for me
fun,
to
though.
critique. If I was coaching my wife, I'd be telling my wife, get the hell out. Crawl that fence over there. Like, I respect his head. I don't know how he could do it. you
That's
know?
what makes the sport
That'd
so
be
fun,
scary
though.
for me. Like, it's crazy. Like, my son used to box, was very talented. He started playing soccer, and I was like, please play soccer. I couldn't even imagine watching my son fight. I could be super cool with my fighters. I couldn't imagine having my family, like, again.
But, all right, Trevor, well, you just felt burn in your life. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. You're inspiration to us and to a lot of people out there. So tell the people where they can find you. You're Onyx. Where can they find you at?
So Onyx, you can find it at onyxsports.com. That's ONX sports.com. Social media, I apologize, I don't have none. I stay off. Like, again, a very, very simple-minded, but if you ever see me anywhere, come up, say what's up. I'd like to say what's up. Appreciate you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for
coming
doing
on.
this. And
Yeah.
as a gift for coming on the show, you will be getting the Black
Sweet.
Label Edition Burn Factory hoodie.
Sweet, the logo is so sweet.
Thank you.
I can't believe that's you.
Hey, me in 10 years from now. No joke. But thank you again for doing this, and we really do appreciate it. And like always, please visit my foundation as well, thepriestjamesfoundation.org. Again, thepriestjamesfoundation.org to understand why we call this the Burn Factory.
And another huge shout out to Black Lab Sports for helping us make this happen, giving us this studio to create an amazing conversation here with Trevor Wittman, one of the greatest minds in all of fighting. But like always, like, comment, and subscribe at the Burn Factory Podcast. We'll see you guys for the next episode. Peace.